Welcome to Frankly Developing. I'm your host Frank, and today we'll investigate the difference between effective and efficient software development. These are two closely related terms that often get mixed up, so we'll take a look at the game of Go, as it demonstrates the difference in an easy way. Transferring these concepts to software development allows us to make a much bigger impact. I'll give you several examples that you can apply right away to get more out of your time. If you like increasing your impact, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more tips like this in the future. Let's start by looking at the Wikipedia definitions of these terms. Like effectiveness is the capability of producing a desired result or the ability to produce a desired output. So it's just about getting it done in a correct way. And then efficiency, when you contrast it, it is a ability to avoid making mistakes or wasting materials, energy, efforts, and so on. So it's all about making the most with the resources you have available. Let's take a look at the game of Go. And here we have something with a cool name. It's from Chochikun's Encyclopedia of Life and Death. Well, as someone who's playing Go, you can see that this is pretty elementary. If you don't know, it doesn't really matter. These are some simple exercises on making the right move. So when we talk about effectiveness, a move like this would not be effective because you just basically lost this puzzle. And instead, if you find the right place, you can go somewhere like here and say, okay, now this is very effectively black, killing all the white pieces. Having any other move on this board basically doesn't work to kill them, and you lose a lot of resources. In the game of Go, you can be very effective by just killing all these other pieces of your opponent. All these white stones are going to be gone and removed, and their score is points. So that is kind of the output-focused idea. You get an exact result. You get the points that actually win the game. So this is effectiveness. Let's now take a look at efficiency. So if this move is actually the correct one to kill the white stones, then white may decide to play elsewhere instead. And just, there's no point in saving these, right? But again, you can keep playing on here, and white will again play elsewhere. You keep playing here, white plays somewhere else, you play here, white plays somewhere else. And you can see the effectiveness in place, like it's actually removing these stones from the game once you surrounded them completely. So in terms of effectiveness, this is ultimately effective. They're just gone, they're scoring points right away. But what happens now is that on the overall big picture kind of thing, the whole game is supposed to be about surrounding territory, and here is the territory that black is basically surrounding, saying like, this isn't going to be mine. Whereas white, well, he's laying claims to all of these territories here. So in terms of effective versus efficient, white is more efficient by saying, I used only these 4 stones, these 4 moves, and potentially I'm getting a lot more territory, a lot more points from this than black did with these 4 moves. Although they were very effective moves and killed the white stones, white is still way ahead in this game by just having these efficient usages and making more use out of each of the stones. Let's now take a look at how this works in code, where it's actually still quite manageable. Here's an example from a online SQL demo where you can see for SQL queries, this is an effective query. It just retrieves all the stuff you need from the database. But of course, there are more ways to be efficient instead of effective only. So if you want to, for example, only get the names, you don't need to get all of this other data. And maybe you only want to get 10 of them. So this would be just as effective, but way more efficient. If you compare this result to the previous one, there's way less data that needs to be transferred and queried and retrieved from the database. Here's a short example code which demonstrates effectiveness versus efficiency. On the first block, we see a list being created, and on the second block, it's instead a sorted set And then when you run the third and fourth block and you search through each of these data structures, you see in the output that one of them is much faster than the other. Now, both are effective solutions. As with code, we always have effectiveness because it just does what we want it to do, and everything else we would probably consider a bug. Now, instead, for efficiency, there is a huge difference. And it matters in how you're supposed to work with that data structure in your program. Do you have many calls, then the time for each contains might become relevant, and the second one might be a more efficient use of your resources. Whereas the first one might come in handy if you have a smaller set of numbers and the list doesn't get searched very often. In general, when we talk about code, we usually don't care very much about effectiveness, because that's really just about getting the right results. And we got that covered pretty much. But efficiency is usually when we talk about optimization. We can optimize for different areas and thus reach efficient use of our resources. And resources can be all sorts of things depending on what you value most. So usually people talk about optimization when it's about getting things to work faster, to run faster, to use less memory. So these are typical optimizations, but you can also optimize for readability, extensibility, maintainability, all these clean code aspects, and that is another way of optimizing and spending your resources efficiently. Let's switch over to the process side of how we develop our software, and we'll see that now effectiveness and efficiency become much more interesting. Where in code, we cannot really get rid of effectiveness, because then our code would be broken and not work correctly. In the process side of things, you can do a lot of work on effectiveness, just like on the Go board, where you can make absolutely sure of certain things and still lose out on the overall picture, because efficiency is that much more important. Consider planning, for example. You can spend a lot of time to be effective at planning, but if you don't follow that plan through because of changing requirements and other things, then it's not very efficient, despite having this really great plan. So instead you want to focus on more efficient things, like spending most of your resources on getting valuable outputs, instead of spending the resources on getting a result that you don't really care about that much. Similarly, if you look at reviews, completely different topic, but if you spend your time reviewing a piece of code, looking out for these small things like where the brackets go, where the spaces go, the indentation, all of this stuff that might be very effective, and you can do that really good, but it's not very efficient because it needs you with a highly salary paid person, and instead uses a tool that does the same thing very efficiently, not using a lot of resources. And if you look at CI/CD, continuous integration and delivery, then it's similar. You can do that to get your build done and it's working correctly, so it's very effective. But you also want to be efficient in terms of the resources that matter. In this case, the time of developers that they need to wait until something is done. And in general, all of your feedback loops in the process are following a similar thing. You don't want to have this perfect effective feedback thing that maybe takes 2 weeks to reach you, but instead you want this to be very efficient, not use up a lot of resources, and in case of automation, use all of that to get faster feedback into your process. So in summary, we have both things to take care of. Things have to be effective, because if we are not effective, eventually we're going to miss out on something. You can always be only efficient and never get down to the effective part that actually gets results. So instead, some effectiveness is always needed. In the code, much more though than in the process, where we can optimize a lot more on efficiency because the bigger picture takes more of a role. Just like in Go, when you tackle a small problem, and like these life and death situations, you really want effectiveness, pure effectiveness. But when you take the whole game into account, then efficiency becomes way more important. But still, if you ignore effectiveness completely, you will still lose the game. Just like in software development, you still want efficiency combined with effectiveness.